Okay, here's going to be the third part, starting to put some more color onto these things. So what I've done here is just, again, more craft paint around the bottom to give it a base color of, brown and stuff like that. So nothing super fancy, just, again, hitting that, give it some color, and I'll start some dry brushing in a little bit here, but what I want to do first is get an initial wash on. So what I did to also give additional contrast is I took a really thin uh, set of red and it started brushing over some of the panels. And again, because this is orc, just kind of being sloppy and splotchy and stuff like that. And the reason I'm doing this, well, a couple of things. One, this layer is really thin. What I did is I took some, you can see how transparent the red is, because red is really intense color, so you need to thin it down a lot. And essentially what you're doing is you're doing a glazing over this, which unlike a wash where it doesn't have much pigment, this you're still have a has a fair amount of color to it. And while this is coming out a little bit brighter than what it is, once you begin to hit it with the wash, you'll you'll tone that down. But if you can see, the original dry brush is still through it, so it's still got some translucent through the whole thing, but it gives it that base color. So when I throw uh, different washes and then throw some of the pigments and stuff at it, the weathering pigments, it'll actually then give it even different variations and stuff. So just even did some with where I did some little just hash marks and stuff like that, and even went so far to let's see if I can find one here. Just did some typical orc stuff on it, and once I wash that, that'll come back out. But then I can use that as essentially, as a template and re-highlight that back up, and it will stand out. And then at the end, I'll just do some paint stuff and put glyphs. So that's why I've left some of these uncolored, and I'll do glyphs and probably either a bleached bone or something like that. So the last thing though, is on this red using here, you're going to need to use actually your GW type paints and stuff like that, something that has a good pigment, so that when you do water this out, it does give a transparency to it. If you use craft paint, it really just turns it into a wash, and you won't get the same consistency out of it. You'll really have to flood it and flood it again and again and again to get any kind of color contrast out of it. So this is just, again, it's Oryx, be a little sloppy, throw some stuff on the inside, stuff like that. But that's the basic part of it here. Once I finish a little bit more of this, I'm going to then throw a wash, and then it's going to be let it dry for a fair amount of time. So just going to give a pullback shot here. You can start seeing what these things look like. That red just gives a little bit more contrast, and the washes will tone it down a little bit more. And I'm thinking about maybe doing one more color on some of the plates and stuff like that. So I'll be back after I throw a wash on and after everything dries. Bye. Okay, I've just finished giving these things a wash, so you can see here. Uh, just did kind of basically a flood job on them. Nothing fancy, again, just trying to get into all the crevices and stuff like that to let it go and let it run and let it dry and be all kind of splotchy and stuff like that. So this stuff is supposed to be you know dropped in kind of pieces of terrain for fortification. So uh, you know give them a chance to weather up and stuff like that. So this is also a kind of a home brew of things. This is not a standard GW wash, and I'm not thinning down. I'm not thinning down paints and stuff like that. Nor am I using my, the expensive GW washes and things like that. So what I what I do is I use basically a modified method of awesome paint jobs method for making washes. And what I'm trying to do here is make stuff in bulk. So, how can I make stuff that I'm going to throw onto terrain and give me some of the basic kind of dirty colors? So, what I do is I just take an old Citadel shade pot, and while it doesn't have that in it, what I then do is I went out and got some black India ink. Again, got this I think at Walmart for a buck or two, and then got some additional India ink in the frame. It's just a sepia color, basically kind of more of a brownish color. And then all I ended up doing here is I used some matte medium and some water with some flow aid and mix it together. Roughly I do a lot less matte medium for kind of my terrain-based washes, and put that all to basically mix that up, and I kind of usually if I want like of a darker wash I'll do more black, less brown. If I want a more brownish wash I'll do kind of the less, or I'll kind of split it up. And I've done different batches and just kind of look at it for basically how I want. And so essentially for a few, for probably 10, 15, 10, 15 cents, I'll fill up a pot of this stuff, and then I can slather it all over terrain, and it essentially doesn't cost me a whole lot. And I've done this a bunch of times, and I doubt if you can see it, but I mean, these things are barely touched because they're just doing droppers out of this stuff. And I bet you I could make a couple gallons of wash easily and not tap into half of these things. So if you're going to do big pieces of terrain, I highly recommend looking at this stuff. And you can kind of, again, vary the shades and vary the colors. And you don't need a whole lot of this stuff because this is ink, so it's very intense. But the nice part is because it's not pigment, it isn't ink, it flows real well. You don't need a lot of, you don't need a lot of the different techniques you normally use on a model to get it to do what you want. Just really liquids, and then just you can thin it up and down to to dilute the intensity, or take a small batch if you make this even in a little bit bigger bottle, and you can up the intensity by dropping another drop or two of ink in it if you want to vary it. So the good part is if you mess it up or whatever, you just throw that little bit of a batch out and make another one real quick. So highly recommend it. You can kind of see how it turns out with this stuff. I'm gonna let this dry overnight, and then once that's done, like I said, it'll be dry brushing some more stuff, and then it will be on to kind of the final little details and stuff like that. So there you go.